In this episode, we're going to talk about 3 reasons why golfers don't get better. Now, this is sort of specifically traps that they fall into. And it is something that I see a lot. I've played a lot of golf recently with amateur golfers and still play with some of my pro friends as well. And these are 3 common things that I just think golfers really need to pay attention to. And to kick off the episode, I was thinking of stories I could tell or golfers I could think of that really fell into these traps. And then I realized it was actually me. It was me. So this is really what I'm describing as essentially what I got wrong when I was a 16-year-old golfer, all the way up to when I was 19 years old. So I started golf when I was 12 or 13 years old. I got down to a 4 handicap by the time I was 16, but then I just got stuck. I was practicing every single hour. I was obsessed with golf. I wanted to become a golf pro, and I just got worse. And really, when I look back, it was these core things that I got wrong. But I also see these play out so often with different golfers, and it's one of the reasons I talk so much about practice, structure, stats, and those aspects. So we'll dive in. With each one, I'm going to talk through what the issue is, what that then looks like in terms of what we see from the golfer, and then critically, like how to fix it and how to make sure that you don't fall into this rut yourself. Key thing, just before we hop in, this is obviously for golfers who are already practicing some amount. I don't actually think you need to practice a huge amount, but if you're practicing, say, 1.5 to 2 hours a week, all the way up to 10 hours a week, I still think you can get better at a really quick rate. And if you can start to not fall into these traps or really optimize each of these, you'll really accelerate the rate at which your scores go down. So let's hop into trap number one. Now, trap number one is that they don't know how to lower their scores. So what this looks like is you see so many golfers at the range hitting 7-irons, trying to improve their driving, spending time doing drills on the range or even the short game or putting. And even though they're probably making progress within that, their scores aren't getting lower. We see this a lot. I see so many golfers doing this. And the key thing with this is understanding why you are scoring a certain way. So if we look at golf, the outcome measure is actually shots or strokes. It takes you to complete 18 holes. And then you need to understand, well, okay, if I want to improve by 5 shots, if I want to go from a 12 handicap down to, say, a 7 handicap, what do I need to do? Well, you need to find 5 shots from somewhere. And the answer, as people who have listened to me before, is with playing stats. So you need to keep some sort of playing stats so that you can go, oh, okay, my driving is an area where isn't good enough. Or maybe my putting between 5 and 10 feet is letting me down. So as soon as you have those stats, you can start to do 2 things. You can benchmark where you are now as a golfer, and then you can actually start to see if you're improving those metrics as you move forward. So we really should talk about, well, what stats do you need to keep? I think if you're above a 15 handicap, basic stats is fine, and it gives you a really nice proxy. So if you keep fairways in regulation, greens in regulation, putts, and your up and down percentage, that's a really good start. And you can at least look at those metrics. And I'll try and link to some information so you can see where you should be based on what level of handicap you are. Some extra ones, which I think are really useful as a high handicap, is fairways and regulation. They kind of matter, but not too much. But what you should do is how many times could you not advance the ball forward off a tee shot? So that's like a really nice metric to keep because they're the ones that really affect your score. Likewise, you may not be hitting many greens if you don't hit the ball far enough. But if you can have greens in regulation +1, that's a great stat. If a par 4 you're expecting to get on the green in 2 for a professional player, you can have greens in regulation +1, which means you count how many times you hit a par 4 in 3 shots or a par 5 in 4 shots. And that's another really good metric. If you are below a 15 handicap, I think you've got to have some sort of strokes gain data, particularly when you get into single figures, because the thing is your greens in regulation, fairways in regulation, they're just not specific enough to say where you are losing shots. Getting a strokes gained app, BreakX Golf will have one soon. If not, we've got a free strokes gain calculator that I'll link to in the notes below. And just making sure you put in, ideally every round, but even if you just put in a few rounds to see how you start to put together a golf score, that is really helpful. It stops you falling into this trap. So once you have that data, you can start to look at it and go, great, I'm going to try and improve. It could be my fairways in regulation, or I'm going to try and improve my strokes gain putting. You can start to drill down deeper and start to say at what distance you want to try and improve that at. And then you can start to build a plan around that. Now that plan can be going and finding a coach and working on technical aspects. It can be doing skills games to try and improve your level of skill in that area, or even just being aware of it can start to then help you improve it. Because you're suddenly aware that that's the area that is stopping you scoring any lower. Okay, on to trap 2. This is golfers that work on technical swing changes that don't fix their ball flight. I see this a lot. The golf range where I'm at, we see golfers tirelessly working away on certain areas of their swing, but they're not hitting it any better. And what we tend to see is people working on, say, like things in their backswing or where their wrist angles are because they don't look right technically. But that really isn't a way to improve your golf game. And it's actually a really quick way to get worse, is work on things in your swing because they don't look right. This is something I definitely did as a 16, 17-year-old trying to become a pro, thinking I need to fix all these things. And I didn't really link it well to what was going on the golf course and where was my golf ball going. So the fix with this one is actually starting to understand your distribution and where you miss shots. So in the first section of this show, we talked about knowing what area. If you do then know what area you need to miss, do you know what area you need to improve, then you can start to think, right, how am I going to improve that? So if we take driving as an example, I don't care what your swing looks like, but have you got a slice? Because if you've got a slice, we know that the ball's finishing right at the target and it tends to curve left to right from that. Maybe you've got a shot that's finishing left and you identify that it's actually a straight pull that's affecting you. Once you know this information, you can start to then work backwards. So we can start to say, right, well, the ball's finishing right at the target. In our case, we've got a slice. So that means that the club face is open to the path at impact. And that's what's putting all of the slice spin on the golf ball and causing it to curve through the air. How do we improve it? Well, then we can start to say, right, well, what are the principles we can use to improve the club face to swing path relationship? Please go find a great coach. That's definitely the best way to do this. Find a local coach. There are some good online coaches, but I always think in person is better. And then from there, start to understand, right, if I want to improve my club face to swing path, grip is an obvious example to start with, but maybe it is to do with the release. It may be to do with your wrist angles. It could even be to do with your ball position. And this is the reason to find a great coach is it's very easy to look at your golf swing and say these 12 things don't look right. It's a coach's job to look at someone's swing and think, right, what's the simplest way to improve their performance? And can we keep them on a trajectory or path so that I know how I can keep it developing that player? So yeah, that's the key thing to fix this, is to start with where are your shots finishing around the target? What is the ball flight that's causing that? And then we'll work backwards onto the impact factors and then think about the swing changes you want to make. To help you with this and to make sure you don't get into this issue, I will put a link to a little tool where you can start to plot your shots. This is a little bit more work, so it's more for advanced players, but you can start to plot your shots for a round of golf and then filter by club or distance and start to understand, are you missing long, right, left, short? Another really simple way to do this is to just get a bit of paper and draw a couple of lines so you make a fairway and start to put a little X where your shots finish off the first hole, the second hole, the third hole, and then do the same for the green. So make a green and then put some X's around where your shots finish relative to the target. And straight away, you have this beautiful picture of your dispersion off the tee and into the green. And I guarantee you from doing this many times is it will not be what you expect. So as soon as you do this, you have this realization of, oh, that's where my shots are missing. And straight away, you have some tools to then improve your golf game and start shooting lower scores. On to trap number 3. Trap number 3 is something that I think golfers are actually more aware that is an issue for them, and that is poor on-course strategy. So this is the type of golfer who absolutely smokes it on the range. Everyone tells them they're an incredible golfer, they have a great golf swing, they strike it so pure, and then they go out and still shoot 95 or 100, and then they get really frustrated. And the key for this is not really understanding how to play golf. Having a beautiful golf swing or hitting the golf ball really well doesn't mean you're actually good at scoring. In the inverse, we can have golfers who look like they've got a horrible swing. They may not even strike it well, but you just know that they're going to get it around the golf course in a really good number, and they rarely have a blow up hole. So to do that, what's the fix? Well, it's really understanding course management. Now, there's quite a few bits to this. It's not something that I can cover completely in here, but I will link to a free video that dives a little bit deeper as well. But to start off with, think what you need to score on a hole. So if you're standing on the hole of a par 4 and it's say 400 yards, start to think, well, what do I need? Now, if you're a high handicapper, bogeys are great. They're your friend. You do not need to par every single hole. The killers are those double bogeys and above that really start to destroy your score. So you can start to think, right, I need a bogey on this hole. From there, you can work backwards and start to say, right, well, if I can get on the green in 3 shots and have 2 putts, then I've got my 5. And if I do hold the putt, then amazing. I'm better than I thought I was going to be. So you've suddenly got a 400-yard hole, which sounds quite daunting, but you can work backwards and maybe hit a driver off the tee. And if you're not comfortable at hitting a fairway wood or long iron for your second, you can then nudge it further up there with a 9-iron, chip on the green, and then you've got 2 putts for your 5. So that's the first thing. The other thing is to try and understand that you're aiming for zones, not necessarily the flag. So if you do have a green where the pin is tucked away in the corner, please, 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 just aim for the middle of the green. Aim for the big bit of the green. If you do hit greens in regulation, you are never going to be a bad golfer, and you're likely to shoot some of the best scores of your year. Along with that as well, if you do have large amounts of trouble, so out of bounds or water off the tee, try and give yourself some leeway. So if there is water tight down one side, it is not a bad idea to aim down the other side of the fairway and give yourself maximum leeway for any sort of poor shot. The final thing on this as well is to actually play with your dispersion. So on the golf range, yet you can work on trying to hit straighter shots. But if you go on the golf course and you do have a slice or a hook, the key is to play with that and to make the most of that on any given day. So hopefully those tips help. It's definitely not an endless list, but hopefully they give you some ideas to think about. In terms of taking this away and starting to think about how you can not fall in this trap yourself, start to look at your last round of golf. Where did you make the double bogeys if you're a higher handicapper? Where did you make bogeys if you're, say, trying to get down to scratch? And what happened? Did you play the hole backwards? What was your strategy like? How could you improve that? Once you have that information, then you can start to think, right, well, is there a different strategy I could have used on the golf course to improve my scoring? Then critically, go out and practice this strategy. So that's one way of going out and just saying, well, what happens if I take a different iron or take a different club or aim point off the tee? Or what happens if I aim for the large amount of the green? Over one hole or three holes, this may not make a big difference. But as you start to roll the dice and the probability is more in your favor, you start to then put together more good golf holes, have less blow ups, and you'll start to shoot some of your lowest scores. Another great game you can play is called In Regulation, and that is one of the Breakits golf games, but I'll leave a link to that. I think this is just a great game to go out and play and not worry about how you score around the golf course, but more think about how you can hit more fairways and greens in regulation. So that wraps up the three traps that I see so many golfers fall into who don't get better even though they are practicing. Just to wrap them up again, number one, that is not knowing how you score. And the key to this is actually starting to keep some sort of playing stats. Trap two that we see a lot is working on things in your golf swing that don't actually fix the ball flight that is the issue. And the key fix to this is actually knowing where your dispersion is relative to your target and then working backwards and understanding the ball flight, the impact factors, and then thinking about what to change in your golf swing or putting stroke. And trap three is poor on-course strategy. And there are a few aspects to this, but critically start to think, what score do you need? And then start to play the hole backwards, break it down. And that should give you an understanding of what strategy you need to take and where to aim off the tee and into the green. I hope you found that useful. This is things that I see in amateur golfers a lot, but this doesn't just apply to amateur golfers. I was lucky enough to work with a pro on DP World Tour and just help him out a little bit last year. And this was one of the traps he was falling into. He's an incredible ball striker. He's a hell of a talented player. And when we start to understand why has he gone from his best position in the world and fallen almost 100 places in there, we start to look at the difference between his best season and where he was in 2024. And it was really about 1.2 shots he lost in scoring. And when we started to look at the areas in strokes gained data, it became clear to me that he was probably working on the wrong areas. And when we started to revise that and start to build a plan more around the areas that were going to improve what had lost from those top years, he started to improve better. So it shows you that this is something that can hopefully help a 25 handicapper, but it goes all the way up to the best players in the world. Hope you enjoyed this and look forward to seeing you soon.